On today's episode, we have Steve Salmons, President and CEO of the Windsor Port since 2018, which is Ontario's third largest port. Steve is a lifelong resident of Windsor, graduating from the University of Windsor with undergraduate degrees in psychology and business and an MBA in strategic studies from the Odette School of Business and a graduate of the Policy Governance Academy in Atlanta, Georgia. He's held many leadership roles and serves on many different board of directors. He spent a lifetime serving Windsor-Essex area, and I know that you're going to enjoy this conversation today.
Ship came in. I got hired to do that for like $2 an hour, and I'd get $10 after 5-6 hours.
$2 an hour.
Excited. I was so excited.
Crazy.
Good enough is never good enough. Right. And right now, 80% of everything in the world, food, clothing, table, furniture, eyewear, chemicals, medicines, travel in a container at some point in its life.
All right, welcome back to Cracking the Success Vault with Spectre Financial here. Today we are have the great pleasure of having Steve Salmons here, CEO of Windsor Port. Thanks for being here, Steve.
Sean, my pleasure.
I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm not sure if this is something you do very often, but I'm really excited to hear about your story because you and I have chatted a few times over the last couple of years that I've been involved with the Transportation Club, and that's kind of how we met originally.
Right.
But I want to know a little bit more about your story. So when it came to your bio that you sent me, you grew up here, and you've really been involved in, the community for a very long time, and you've been doing a lot of really great things. But I want to understand a little bit about how it kind of developed to get to where you are. So let's start with where did you grow up? How did you grow up in terms of family?
Sure.
And we'll just kind of spiral from there.
Absolutely. So I've lived in a lot of places in Ontario, but Windsor is always home. So I grew up in Windsor, moved away, came back, moved away, came back permanently.
Okay.
So Windsor is the base. And I find that with a lot of friends, a lot of colleagues, if they, at some point in their lives or careers, they moved away from Windsor, inevitably people come back to Windsor. I think it says something about the community. It says something about a way of life and a quality of life here that despite the, the allure and the sparkle of larger cities or other places, the grass isn't always greener.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. I mean, I moved here from Alberta.
Yes.
I absolutely love it. I don't understand why anybody moves away. I really don't. Great access to the United States, great living, great weather, great cost of it's great.
Yes.
So I'm with you on that.
Yeah. So, I grew up the oldest of a large family, 12 people in the household. I was the oldest of 8 kids, grandparents, parents. So a very much a large family-centric life. You have 8 kids, not a wealthy life.
Right. A lot of expenses.
Yeah. I honestly, I had 3 kids, and it was tough to put boots and coats and shoes on them continuously. How my parents did it, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Especially, a traditional back in the 60s, traditional family. Mom was at home cooking, cleaning, taking care of children, one baby after another, apparently.
Yeah.
And yet they did it. And, when I think back, I grew up right downtown Windsor, right where the casino is. That's where I grew up.
Okay.
Just a few blocks from the waterfront. And, and my children said, wow, you grew up poor. And I said, I don't have that memory.
Right.
I had a very happy childhood. I seemed to have what I wanted.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I didn't have, of course.
Right.
But it was a good life. And so I didn't grow up with, expectations or a sense of entitlement for sure.
Right. And so what did your father do if your mom stayed home?
My father was a truck driver.
Okay.
So a very humble, modest, family.
Yeah. Long haul trucking?
Both.
Both.
Yeah. In the summer, it would be short haul. In the winter, long haul. She had to go further afield because the ships weren't running. Talk about a circle of life, right?
Right. Now, yeah, absolutely.
He worked, it was called Adams Cartage, just a couple blocks from my office. It's now in Sandwich.
Okay.
That was the steel dock. And in fact, it was my very first job. I think I was like 10, 12 years old. And when the ship would come in, they put, they unload plates of steel from the ship. And when you stack the plates, you had to put a 2x4 in each end. The ship came in. I got hired to do that for like $2 an hour, and I'd get $10 after 5-6 hours. And
$2
I was so
an hour.
excited. I was so excited.
Crazy. And
now I can't even get lunch for what I worked all day for.
Right. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. So mom stayed home.
Yeah.
Dad, truck driver.
Yeah.
Sometimes at home nights, sometimes not.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. And So do you think then that because you came from such a family-centric home, is that one of the reasons why you really have gotten involved in the community here in Windsor-Essex with the various roles that you've done? Because this was kind of home and kind of wanting to grow it? Do you think that kind of had a correlation to it, or?
It's an interesting question. Look, I grew up in a family where, in a neighborhood, where neighbors were helpful to each other.
Right.
Family was helpful to each other. So it was just an instilled trait, not necessarily to get involved in the community. Like my dad, was a truck driver. He wasn't involved in the Knights of Columbus, Kiwanis, or Rotary. That wasn't his life.
Right.
But neighbors needed help. You helped neighbors. Family needed help. You helped family.
Right.
And I think that, natural outreach, that natural sense that, of course, you'll help is, just becomes instilled in part of who you are.
Right. And I mean, looking at how I grew up, it was still very similar to that kind of way of life. I mean, I remember, if my parents didn't have butter or whatever, it would just be like, hey, why don't you go to the neighbors and ask? And they always did it to us. We always did it to them.
I remember those days.
And it's interesting because I think a lot of that's kind of gone away.
Yeah.
In
Can you
today's
imagine
society.
going next
It's really,
door?
yeah.
Or the last time, anybody asked for a cup of sugar or a butter or whatever.
And it's probably only been, I don't even know, the last, probably 15 years maybe that's kind of gone away. But I mean, I remember doing that when I was 10, 12, 13, like early 2000s still. And you were still doing that,
I was doing
right?
it in the 60s. So.
You were doing it in the 60s, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so you said oldest of eight.
Eight, yes.
And so did your family, were you guys involved in sports a lot? Did you guys have a lot of competitiveness in you?
It's interesting. My kids asked me, why didn't we play hockey growing up? I said, well, because I didn't play hockey.
Right.
It wasn't part of a thinking or a family's life for me.
Right.
They said, why do you play hockey? I said, it wasn't even a possibility.
Right.
It wasn't something, I'd say to my parents, I need $2,000 to go play hockey in today's dollars.
Right.
No.
Right.
So, the reality is kids from, working, especially blue collar working families, 60s, 70s, they didn't play professional sport, or organized sports,
Yeah.
That wasn't a reality. But funny enough, I did play lacrosse. And why?
Okay.
Because they started the very first lacrosse league in Windsor when I was, 8, 10 years old. So it would have been somewhere in the late 60s. And and I think it was like a $5 or $6 registration, and they gave you the stick.
Oh, wow.
And all you needed was an old helmet and an old pair of gloves. That was it. There's no other equipment then as kids. Now kids now have these incredibly sophisticated body suits. But, and so I learned to play lacrosse, and I played it right till I was 18. In fact, I was an Ontario champion.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I most people don't think about lacrosse as being like a huge sport in here in Canada, but it's actually one of
it's our national game.
It is our national game, right?
Yeah.
Which most people think is hockey.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember bringing my partner and her sons to see a game in Toronto, the Toronto Rock, and they're amazing. And Beth said, were you that good? I said, oh, God, no.
Yeah.
I said, the kids today, the league today, the equipment, the sticks, the training,
It's all specialized.
I said, it is so far beyond anything I knew at 17, 18 years old.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And so played lacrosse all the way through to 18.
Yes.
I know you went to school here in Windsor.
I did. I said, I was just saying this on the weekend to someone. I said, I'm 67, and I thought, I don't feel old, but when I realized the grade school I went to is gone, 3 of them are actually gone.
Wow.
They don't exist. They've been demolished. The high school I went to has been demolished.
Really?
The second one they transfer us to has been closed. I went to Patterson. It was closed and demolished. We were transferred to Low. It's been closed for ages now.
Wow.
I said, so, the house I grew up is gone.
Really? And when you say where the casino is now, that's where you lived. Your house was one of the blocks that got taken down to build the casino.
Correct. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. And so, I mean, in terms of how does that, childhood connect you to life later, right? So, I always tell everybody, I've never really anticipated or knew where the next job would be.
Right.
What the next great opportunity would come forward. When people say to me, I want to move on, I want to do something different, how did you get to do what you're doing? I said, well, it was just like a natural progression, the experiences I had, the skill sets I developed, the connections I made brought me to the next opportunity. I can't tell you I knew 3 months before I would ever consider that I one day would be head of a library or general manager of a city, head of the port.
Right.
And I can damn well tell you, I never thought my very first job out of school was the Royal Bank of Canada. And I was a guy who was so thrilled when they brought out bank machines, I'd never have to go inside of a branch again. I hated bank goings. I hated going in there. They're rude and arrogant, and long lineups, and just didn't look forward to it.
Yeah.
And what did I get for my very first job? Oh, I'm a bank manager.
Right. Getting to deal with all of that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. And so the progression from RBC, right?
Yes.
So RBC to the library.
Yeah. No, I went from the library. So I was with the Royal Bank for about 7 years. Lived in 8 cities. They moved you less than a year.
That's a lot of moving around.
Yeah. And my kids at that point, my kids were 7, 8 years old, and there's a real excitement about getting promoted because every move's a promotion.
Yeah.
So you're always excited, and there's a lot of energy around that. But suddenly, you realize your 7, 8-year-old daughter is saying, "I have to move again. I'm going to move away from my school.
friends.
I'm going to leave all my friends."
Right.
And suddenly you realize, it has to be more than just about you.
Right.
And so I joined Chinook McMaster Hospitals in Hamilton in human resources, and became an assistant director for labor relations.
Okay.
And Chinook McMaster is a massive hospital. It was larger than all Windsor and Leamington hospitals combined. I think we had like 4,500 employees. Human resources had 62 people in it.
Wow.
So they had 150 vacancies at any one time. Recruiting force. So it was a big job, big opportunity.
Yeah.
Got involved at some of the highest levels of labor relations. It was very rewarding. But again, family made a decision for me again.
Right.
My wife at that time, her father had been diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah.
And she said, "I'm not living in Hamilton. My dad's dying in Windsor." You don't have any argument for that.
No, absolutely.
She's right. And I said, and I'll tell you what, here's my promise. I will look immediately in the first job I find, HR job. I don't care what level, entry level.
Doesn't matter.
We're going back to Windsor.
Right.
And that's how I got back to Windsor. And
the first time? Or the last time and then stayed?
The last time.
Last time stayed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I found a job at the library as a human resource manager. I genuinely thought I'd be there a year.
Right.
I ended up being there for 14 years.
Really?
Yeah. And I went on from manager to a director of administration, and then acting CEO, and then shock of all horrors, I became CEO of a library, and I'm not a librarian.
Right.
And that was shocking to staff. It was shocking to the system across the country. So a month or two after I became CEO of the Windsor Public Library, I attended a national meeting of libraries, of big city libraries across the country.
Yeah.
They have an association, the Canadian Library Association. And so I attend the meeting, and in the first break, they all gather around me and they say, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm the CEO of the library." Yeah, we know that, but like, what do you do? I said, "I'm a manager. I have a BA in labor relations." Right. And they said, "So you're not a librarian?" I said, No, I'm not a librarian. Right. And they said, The National Library magazine comes out a month and a half later, and it's a wailing and gnashing of the teeth. This is the end of professionalism. This is, the Windsor Public Library Board has made a horror. These are all my national colleagues,
right?
Just trashing me nationally in the front pages of the paper of the magazine, and and so it didn't feel great,
right.
But still, my argument always was, a librarian can make and has made a great CEO, but to be a CEO of a library, not necessarily the same skills you need to be a librarian.
Right.
You need leadership, planning, strategic thinking,
right.
Control systems, human resource skills, property skills, government relations, public relations. There's a lot of skill sets you need. Yeah. None of those are on a library description.
And I like the fact that you bring that up because I think in today's society, if you're don't have a teacher's degree, people think, well, how can you be a teacher?
Yeah.
I can have things to teach people. Just because I didn't go to school to be a teacher doesn't mean I don't have value to share.
Absolutely.
Right? I find it very interesting where I've been asked a few times in my career if I have my certified financial planner designation.
Yeah.
And I'm working on it, and it's a big process. It's a 4 or 5 year thing. It's like almost going back to school. But just because I don't have a degree or just because I don't have letters behind my name, why does that mean that I don't have the same value somebody else might bring? Right. It's an interesting, I guess I'll call it a dilemma that people think that just because you're not a librarian, you shouldn't be the CEO of a library.
Yep, absolutely. And the irony is, after that, I became the president, of the National Association. I led the Canadian delegation to Europe to study on the library system we can learn in Canada. I chaired the national digitization program, which became Connect Canadians. So from a group that originally, was horrified by my arrival, began to embrace the skill sets that were brought to their profession.
Right.
And I hope that was a good experience for them. It was certainly successful. I was at the Windsor Public Library when I was there. We won a dozen national, provincial awards, and one international award. We were the first library in Canada to have a digital book, first to give a library card away. All our programs, I said a dozen of them in like 4 or 5 years. When I left, we were the most award-winning library in Canada. So it was evidence that, and it wasn't me. I mean, it was a good team there as well.
Yeah, it's not just you.
Yes, exactly. It never is. And what it evident was that the skill sets you need are planning and thinking and outreach and connections.
There's
and
nothing
those
wrong
are skill
with
sets
being a
that are common
librarian,
to every management skill level I've been in. So I've
Right.
been in banking, libraries, municipalities, government, federal ports, all the same skill set.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so where did you think you really learned those skills? I mean, I can relate it to your family, but you know, management, time management, strategic thinking. Where did this come from? I mean, it's not just, you're not born with just management, right? You have to learn it. And I know you went to school in Atlanta for governance planning and stuff. But where did you learn all of this stuff from?
So it's really two tracks. One is, some academic or formal training, whether it was university, programs, courses, the Atlantic Academy for Governance, Disney School for Customers, the Disney University for Customer Service.
Okay.
These were all avenues that built and added pieces to the puzzle for me. I have an MBA in strategic studies. I didn't do that until I was in my 40s.
Right.
And in my 40s, I was already CEO of the library. I didn't need it to get a job.
Right.
But what I needed was a framework to put all these pieces that I'd been accumulating up till my early 40s, put it in one package. And when I got into the MBA program, it occurred to me, my thinking wasn't wrong. It just didn't have framework. It didn't have focus. And suddenly I started thinking, I agree with that, or I have been doing that, but there's actually a more methodical approach to, for better success.
Right.
So it has to be a balance of a variety of experiences and some academic and or additional professional training. Right. You can't do one without the other.
Right. Yeah, and I would say that a lot of people, whether they're trying to move up, call it the corporate ladder, if you would say, or if they're going to be self-employed people, need to understand that, just because you're a good salesperson doesn't mean you might make, the best owner of a business, because it takes a certain person to be good at sales and do that, but it also takes a different type of person to be great at management and running staff and doing other things. So you need to have these lots of different life experiences will all kind of compile into one thing to make you really good at something.
There's been volumes written on the fallacy of, take a really good performer and make him a manager, or a really good manager and make him a director, because unless you invested in that individual some skill sets to make him a good manager or a good director or a good vice president, as you said in your comments a minute ago, you don't absorb this from the air. You're not born with it. You have to learn it through experience or some training or some mentoring, which is critical, really important. Yeah. But I didn't answer your very first question. Where did the core of it all come from? Honest to God, I credit the Royal Bank.
Really?
The Royal Bank training program in the first year, probably the best, most intensive training program ever. To this day, whether at the port, the city, the library, the skills I learned there in terms of human resource management, business planning, audit and control, customer relations, they're all from the Royal Bank.
Right. Interesting.
I would encourage, I would think anybody who gets an opportunity, you might not want to be a banker, but the core and the groundwork and the framework that you will leave the Royal Bank with, even after a couple of years, 2-3 years, or I don't care, TDE Bank, mine was Royal, could be,
Right.
I'm sure they're all pretty similar.
Why do you think that is? Do you think it's because banks are kind of a staple or a pillar of Canadian society, that they are constantly talking to people, dealing with people's money, that they have just built this process over time? Like, why do you think that program, you give so much credit to that program?
Yeah, I've never considered that very question. Why? Why did the bank have such a program? And I think part of it is that when I arrived in the banking system in the early 80s, there was still a culture, you joined them for life. The president of the bank when I joined had been a teller out of high school in the prairies and worked his way up. I can't remember, I don't know if it was the TD or just last week some CEO retired. He started as a teller somewhere in the bank system, worked his way up. He didn't come with an MBA. And I think that was the thinking, right? You're going to be with us for a long time. The banks were committed to excellence and professionalism. And they trained their people in the Royal Bank way. I remember we had a very intensive 1-week training in our first year, and they put us all in the Royal York, which I've never been to a Royal York, never been to a hotel like that in my life. And we spent the week in Royal York. And then on the Friday, we had lunch with the president of the Royal Bank of Canada. Those gold towers beside the Royal York and down the Toronto. We go up to the 45th floor. Elevator door opens, you step up onto the carpet. There's a guy in a white coat waiting for you. He brings you to the table where the president's sitting. There's an orange tree in the center of the room. And we sit with the president and CEO of the Royal Bank of Canada. We've only all been in the bank for 5-6 months. And the message was, this is going to be your life if you sell your soul to us. And I did. I worked day and night for years. But then the moment came where I, had to make a career shift. And,
had to make a career shift.
And I think that a culturalization, really important lessons to businesses everywhere. Invest in your people.
Yeah, I was going to say. And so, okay, so you go from RBC
to the
hospital, to the library,
the
city, government, and now the port. And are those some lessons that you have taken along the way?
Absolutely.
And you've brought with you as you've gone from one place to another?
Yeah, and I picked up lessons along the way. And I also picked up great mentors along the way. I mean, when I was a young guy in the bank, senior bank managers were great, mentors. When I was in the library, and I've always credited Tony Haddad, he was, I think, deputy treasurer at the city at the time. I would talk to him all the time, about how to deal with the city and larger issues and larger challenges. Because he brought with some experience that he had gained through bruises along the way.
Right.
And he was always really helpful. And then when I got to the city, I had colleagues that had been in the municipal world, all their career.
Right.
I had been 1 month in the municipal world. Here I am general manager. And I really listened carefully to them and their skill sets, how to manage councils and, how to work with, some complex human environments, 3,000 employees in the city. And, and they all have opinions and
I was going to say,
and
that's got to be a tough, that's got to be a tough role to be in.
And I'm an outsider.
As an outsider who has not been a part of a city organization before, where, especially with politics and everything else, you're never going to satisfy everybody.
No.
Right? No. That's got to be a pretty tough role, that a lot of that management skill set that you learned was very helpful, I'm assuming.
Yeah. And of course, I was 44 years old when I became general. It was the arrogance of youth too, right? I'm just going to do this.
Yeah.
And I had to learn some small p political skills with organizational dynamics, with colleagues and senior managers, with councils, and that's what I learned. And when I got to the province level on the political side, I wasn't a bureaucrat. I was a political advisor, with the Premier's office, Ministry of Transportation, and then Finance. I went in there understanding how municipalities work, because in a province, municipalities are critical to you.
Yeah.
And organizations we're dealing with, whether they're construction associations or or others, you have to understand the dynamics and the power politics of that.
Right.
And I learned those lessons in the city.
Right.
And And then, when I went back into the port world now, I understood how it worked on the bureaucratic side because I was one. I understood how it worked on the political side because I was there for years.
Yeah.
I understand, the limitations of politicians. They understand the limitations of bureaucrats and how to work both.
Right. And so for people who are watching or listening and, wanting things to happen right now, wanting to hit that goal today because they set that goal last year. Would you say that you're quite a big believer that given a lot of time, given a lot of experiences, those goals and those things can happen, but you probably, shouldn't expect them to happen just right out of the gates then?
I mentioned the arrogance of youth. That's one of those is that we'll get this done now. We'll get this done next week. It'll only take us a few weeks. We'll get this done by Christmas.
Right.
It takes a little while. There's a lot of pieces you have to put together. You have a lot of players you have to get online and agree, then get rolling.
Right.
So I've learned patience as my career developed into where I am today.
Yeah.
But I've never lost a sense of urgency.
Right.
And I think the people I know who I admire and respect, who have been very successful, they always have a sense of urgency, a sense of focus, determination. It's not that they're going to get it done by Christmas.
I was going to say,
but they are going to get it done.
Yeah, I was just about to say, so for someone who hears that then, and I think I know what you mean, but how would you suggest that someone has a sense of urgency, wanting to hit a target, a goal, get something done, but at the same time understand that it's going to take patience at the same time?
Yeah. I mean, the point is, you need to be focused, and think strategically, right? I mean, there's an argument of we need a strategic plan. No, you need to act strategically.
Right.
And that means, what is it did you want to change? Why do you know it has to change? And why does it, why is it going to be better? It's going to change. And how do you convince everybody around you of that?
Right.
And then bring everybody, don't drag them because it's not going to work.
Right.
Convince everybody and get them all on board and get moving towards the same goal and stay focused. Don't get distracted, by the squirrels.
There's definitely too many things out there.
That's right.
Squirrels.
That's right.
For in any industry to get people distracted.
And if you've determined that there are 2 or 3 things within your organization or within your plan that are critical to your success, the organization, and remember the organization, not me. It's not about my success. Right. I'll be gone. I'll be retired in a few years. So it's not about Steve. The organization is going to continue. The port's going to continue. The city community is going to be more, more prosperous. Yeah, that's what I'm hired to do. That's what my whole mandate is. Right. So, there's one trait that I've always said I have. Whenever interview I've ever said, they said, "How would you describe, your personal style?" I said, I have an impatience with the status quo.
You have an impatience with the status quo. Okay.
Yeah. My partner, she would say, nothing's ever good enough for you. And I would then quote my father, the grade 8 educated truck driver raising 8 kids in downtown Windsor, would say, I swear it was every day to me, Stephen, good enough is never good enough.
Right.
And I live and think of that every day, that to somehow say, why should I bother? Why is that my responsibility? That question never enters my head. I look at something, I say, why would we do that? Or why are we not doing this?
Right. It's interesting you say that because I was literally just having multiple conversations today with a couple other people, and it's that same mentality that good enough is never good enough. It can always be better, right? It's that whole growth, right? Like we can always get better. We can always think better. We can always do better. We can always be more efficient. We can always do things better than what they're doing now. We just have to understand how can they get better.
Absolutely. That same president of the World Bank, A.J. Taylor, I'm sure he's long gone now. Because, when I was 25, he looked like he was 100. I'm sure he was only 60.
Right.
But I mean, now that I'm 67, I'm sure he's left us, but he was an extraordinary man. But I remember he put out, when we were going through a big economic challenge in the banking world, he put out a note, he said, we can't stop the world from changing, and neither would we, even if we could.
Interesting.
And I loved that. And of course, it stuck with me.
Say that again.
We cannot stop the world from changing, and
Yeah.
neither would we, even if we could.
Right.
You know, how can we ever be satisfied with the way things are?
Right.
We don't want a better world for our children. We don't want a more prosperous community. We don't want life to be better for us and our partners and our
Right.
families and our neighbors.
Right.
We should never be satisfied with the status
Right.
quo.
I like that saying. I'm gonna take that's two people I'm taking things from today. That's interesting. Okay, so let's talk a lot about the port then.
Yes,
right
let's
now.
do it.
So when I first met you, you had just taken over, I believe, CEO of the port, because you came to the WTC meeting, a board meeting, and told us a lot about the changes and the branding change and all that stuff.
Yep.
It's definitely changed a lot in the last, I guess that's 7 years now.
8 years now.
8 years now.
Yeah.
It's definitely changed a lot since then. But you shared with me a video. I don't know where you were speaking. It was at a conference of some kind. And you mentioned that the Great Lakes and the economy that happens between Canada and the United States is the third largest in the world.
Yep.
That seems ridiculous to me, that the Great Lakes just between our two countries is the third largest in the world. So talk a little bit about what's going on there.
When you think about the states and the provinces that surround the Great Lakes, Quebec, Ontario, the 7 great states of Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, my God, this is the economic engine of North America.
Right.
So, I too was stunned by that stat. So it's an easy one to remember once you hear it. But what does it mean for us? So it means that not only are we the third largest economy in the world, jointly with our U.S. friends, it also means we can learn in school. We're in the largest freshwater Great Lakes system in the world, and it's only utilized 50% capacity.
Right.
We don't have to build another lock, another dock, we don't have to ground out another channel. It's only a 50% capacity, and when I meet people from countries around the world and they talk about how they use the inland water systems of Europe and South America and Asia, they find it incomprehensible we're not making 100% use, 110% use of our Great Lakes to service the third largest market in the world.
Right.
Especially
So is that because we don't have enough ships? Is that because we don't want to? Is that because why only 50%?
So there's a few reasons. So one is this same third economic engine of the world is also the heart of the automotive industry of the world.
It's true.
Trucking, cars. Right? So we developed a modal system that was heavily auto reliant.
Right.
Right. And as we went through, the last part of the 20th century, just-in-time deliveries and trucking, long-haul trucking. My dad was a long-haul trucker. Now a truck driver can drive, I think, 8-10 hours, and they have automated systems. Right. Shuts the truck down. They can't drive anymore. So those days are gone. You can't drive from Windsor to Montreal anymore.
Right. Because you used to just be able to drive as long as you could drive,
my dad. I remember my dad had. My dad's not with us anymore, so I can let out the family secret. He had 2 sets of books. One 8 hours under the. Where he would track his 8 hours he's driving. Another one under the seat. When that one filled up, you throw that one, pull the other one up, put that on the dash because he got stopped by MTO. Yeah, I've only been driving for 3 hours. It was like 12.
Wow.
Yeah. And you had to drive hard and long to make money, to raise a family, et cetera.
Yeah.
So those days are gone. The other part of that is we have the most important one, and the one we're trying to change today, and the one that stopped us for decades now is, at some point when we built in the 50s, when we built the Welland Canal to open up the inner Great Lakes to the world.
Yeah.
Because you could come to Ontario through St. Lawrence. That was it. You couldn't go any further. And the reason we have Lakers, the ships that we grew up in this region knowing, especially, the old ones with the cab on the front and the engine in the back, or the big long ones, the Edmund Fitzgerald that we're going to be talking about this week because it's the anniversary. But those ships evolved because they had no competition.
Right.
On the western side of the Lake Erie and the Great Lakes, they had no competition.
Right.
So mostly it was just barge business, small ships, And then when they were going to open the Welland Canal, they said, oh my God, the big ships from the world are coming in. We can need bigger ships. They started building big lakers,
Right.
right? But what we didn't anticipate was in the 70s was the evolution of the container. And right now, 80% of everything in the world, food, clothing, table, furniture, eyewear, chemicals, medicines, travel in a container at some point in its life.
Right.
And because of that, if we're not in the container business of the Great Lakes, that third largest economy will be a third world economy because they're just not connected to the global marketplace.
Right.
And they're also losing opportunities to sell to the global marketplace. They're losing opportunities to bring product in, or it's time delayed and cost delayed. Because right now, the furthest you can get a container ship into the Great Lakes, St. Lawrence system is Montreal. And even those aren't big ones. When you think of the container ships on
the
television,
seas and stuff like that,
you see
like
the
5 or
stacks
6 stacked up high.
Those are what coming to Montreal. Those are 10 to 14,000 containers on a ship. Right.
Sorry, what?
10 to
14,000
So,
individual containers on
yes,
one ship.
But
oh my God.
those are now a decade out of date. The ones that are coming out of Asia now that are going to Vancouver, potentially Halifax, and New Jersey and California, they're 20 to 24,000 containers now.
Whoa.
They're larger than an aircraft carrier. They're 3 football fields long.
Wow.
Yeah. These are massive ships.
When I think of a boat on the ocean with that many containers, and I've probably seen them in a picture or on a movie or whatever, you don't count them to think that there's 20 to 24,000
If you
on a
count
ship.
up and down and do the quick math, you think, they can't be that many.
They can't be that many. No, you're like 10 across and 4 down and like whatever.
It
That's
gives you a
not
sense
that bad.
of how massive they are, how wide.
Right.
I mean, they're going down 12 levels into the hull.
Right, that's true too.
Yeah.
You only see the surface part.
Like an
you
iceberg,
don't see
That's right.
the stuff below.
So, that's changing the global supply chain. And because our businesses don't have access to that, they're reliant on rail and trucking. So right now, 100,000 containers are coming into Ontario every single month.
100,000 containers every month.
Yeah.
From
About
rail.
about 19,000 a year come into Windsor-Essex County containers.
Wow. From rail or trucking.
Rail or truck. So once they get to Montreal, they're unloaded and they're shipped onto rail or trucking. About 80% of it's trucking. Now, if you've drove through Toronto, I just did this past weekend, we're adding
It's
to
insane.
congestion. We're not talking about carbon footprint anymore, but the carbon footprint of trucks, not good for long haul. They're not, we need trucks for short haul. No doubt about it. But from Montreal to Windsor, long haul truck. So it's slow, it's costly. And here's how slow and how costly it is. So we, along with several other ports on the Great Lakes, Goderich, Hamilton, Toronto, Picton, we just did a study. Had a professional firm study the econometrics of it. And if we were to move those containers onto a ship of, say, 1,000 to 1,400 containers that can go through the Welland Canal, through the Great Lakes, it can do a milk run to Toronto, to Windsor, maybe Cleveland, Detroit, Goderich, then pick them all up on the way back out. We would shave 8 days off the shipping time and the $3,000 off the cost of each container.
Wow.
So 19,000 containers times $3,000 savings and 8 days each. That time and money, that's what we're denying in our business. And opportunity for the world markets.
Well, yeah. And I mean, that just sounds like a no-brainer.
Like, why aren't
idea.
we doing it?
Why aren't we doing it? Let me tell
you why.
I was going to say, you've had the experience through all these different things. So why aren't we as a country doing that if it's going to save us time and money?
Why aren't we doing this?
That's crazy to me.
It doesn't make any sense. Well, in order to bring containers in, we need CBSA, or what we call customs clearance.
Yeah. And
CBSA has simply, indicated they're at a point where they don't have the resources to do it. They're being stretched too thin. They also have clearly philosophically would rather just do it all in Montreal because that's the way they've always done it. And so
the old adage of just not changing something that's just always been there.
That's right. That's right. I'll give you another adage.
That seems crazy.
I'll give you another adage. We're always more comfortable with the inferior of which we're sure of over the superior for which we're unsure of.
Right.
You know, and that
The
is
devil you know is better than the
CBSA.
devil you don't know.
You know, and CBSA is a big entity, very difficult to change course.
Right.
But through our professional associations, through the Association of Canadian Port Authorities, Chamber of Marine Commerce, the Ontario Marine Commerce, we have been encouraging Ontario to push. We've been pushing through our professional associations. And with this new government, we were thrilled to see in the budget was a direction to CBSA and Transport Canada to work towards short sea shipping and containers on the Great Lakes.
Really?
So it's not a guarantee,
Right.
but oh my God.
To start working
this
towards it
slow-
is a
so
big step
you
forward.
asked me before, you know, how patient do you have to be? We've been working on this for 3 years.
Yeah, no kidding.
We're probably 3 years away yet,
Right.
but it'll be the crowning achievement of my career here
Right.
if we get this.
Right.
And not only me, but so many other people.
Are you going to
so
stick
many other-
around the port until it happens?
I'll be here in 3 years.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You're going to have to see your work through to the end,
well,
you know?
yeah. I mean, because it's too important. It's not, just short sea ship containers. It changes businesses, and it I mean, this will be this will literally be a quantum shift of modal transportation in terms of resiliency, options, time, money. Companies in this region. I mean, the very first question I had when I was out doing a meet and greet among my customers, one said, "When are you going to containers?" Well, not being a port guy and only been here for like 2 weeks, I said, "We don't do containers," half jokingly. I said, "I don't know. I'll find out." And I find out, no containers stop in Montreal. Why? And that started that process off 8 years ago.
Right.
So we have, like, for example, we could potentially load grain or animal feed in a container and ship it to Malaysia.
Right.
But if we don't have a container to put on a ship, you're not going to fill it, put it on a truck and train, then move it again onto another. That's too expensive, too slow, too costly. There are markets in Africa, South America that can only be serviced by containers. They don't have the ability to deal with bulk, like, just unloading 30,000 tons of grain on the dock. They don't have that ability. They want it in containers. And countries around the world are sending it to them in containers. United States, Toledo is a major grain center as a port. They put it in a container, ship it down North Carolina, and ship it overseas. Wow. So we're doing containers now, but we're not.
So are you talking about sort of like are you talking about like same size boats with not 20 to 24,000 containers, but like 50,000 smaller containers being dropped off in places?
The containers stay the same size.
Okay.
So the one remarkable thing that happened in the world, everybody back in the 70s, everybody agreed on one size there was no Betamax.
Which is weird for the world to do.
There was no VHS Betamax fight. There was no, Samsung Apple fight. Everybody said, yeah, we're all going to use an Apple.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
And so we know the exact dimensions, 10 by 10, 20 by 40, or by 40. And it's called a TEU. TEU, and it's just one unit. Yeah. And so because we have that, all we got to do is get it to the market. Now, there may be a role to use Montreal as, for some shipments, or as a launching pad, just to, use it as a hub. But eventually we want to ship to the world, from the world and to the world.
Right.
Cleveland's doing it right now. They're going Europe to Cleveland direct with container ships, about 800.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and the one thing we know is, leave the door open, the Americans are going to eat our lunch because they're entrepreneurs. They're aggressive. They're good at this game.
Right. Yeah. And okay, so you've obviously had some experience in politics and stuff like that, at MTO and finance and all that stuff. Why is it, do you think, that Canada seems to not care about getting our product, our resources to the rest of the world? And my example, I'm from Alberta. People might hate me for this. XL pipeline.
Yep.
We had a great idea to build this pipeline east to west, get our oil to markets, be able to ship it to places, et cetera, refine it ourselves, not send it to the US, and our government buys it and shuts it down. Like, what is the purpose for not getting the things that we have, that we are rich in, to sell to make our country more profitable? I don't understand. It's almost like this container thing. If it's going to save you time and money, why would you not do it?
That's right. Not only not do it, So the argument, CBSA, I'll come back to your question.
Yeah.
CBSA said, we don't have the resources to do it. We're stretched thin. Our study also showed that within 2 months of the containers, the fees the government will get off of the containers will pay for all of CBSA in less than 90 days.
Right.
Each year. So they'll have 9 months of extra revenues and fully paid for CBSA services.
And still save time and money.
Yeah. So a good example to your question, there are so many dynamics that go beyond the economic argument, right? There are political and social economic arguments, right? Social, political philosophies. Previous government, environment overruled everything.
Right.
This government, economic opportunities seems to be overruling everything.
Really?
Prime Minister Carney recently said, he wants a review of government processes. So he said, process must serve the outcome. Outcomes must not be a victim or a servant of process.
Right.
And so that's a fundamental mind shift.
Right.
And so we'll see as a rollout. But here's the one thing I learned when I was in government, when I was on the political side in finance.
Yeah.
We're there for a few years. Bureaucracy's there forever. Maybe not the same players, but the bureaucracy as itself and its tools, its levers, its systems. And I realized very quickly, we're just the tenants. They're the landlord, and they are. I also learned,
and only some of the tenants roll over every couple of years too.
Yeah. And even ministers don't stay for 4 years. They're there for a year or two and they get moved on. So hold the minister. But what I did learn, and to their great credit, the Ontario public sector I worked with, immensely talented, immensely dedicated, genuinely wants to do the right thing. But again, to turn a ship is very, very difficult.
100%.
And if you want to bring in new systems and new programs, right, it's a long process. And what happens? Well, the minister changes.
You got to start the process all over again.
And when a minister changes, it's literally like bringing in a new government, because that minister wants to put his or her stamp on it.
Right.
And if the previous minister was championing this and got tossed,
maybe I don't
you're not playing that program for it,
that.
because that's probably why he or she got tossed.
Interesting.
And so they want to come in with their program. So you get this, revolving chairs of ministers, and then at a higher level, governments.
Right.
So bureaucracies read the political tea leaves as well.
Right.
And if they see it's generally a government priority, they'll move forward with it. When they don't agree, they will drag their heels.
Right.
They do. And they have lots of, techniques and to do that.
Yeah.
They'll say, well, Steve, that we'd have to consult with justice on that too. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. And and finance will have to have a say.
And now it's okay. This is
they're dragging
their heels on. Right. Yeah. Okay. And so for people who are listening, then I'm hearing a lot of, managing people, strategic thinking, but you also need to be able to understand how to get certain people to the table as well, because we all have to work together.
Yeah.
Right. It can't be half of us agree, half of us disagree, because that's going to get people dragging their heels. We have to find a way to get everybody on the same page so that everybody gets to move the boat forward.
Yeah. One of the questions, I get, certainly from my partners is, why are you constantly doing all these lunches? I said, it's always about, making connections with people.
Right.
And maybe one day I can help them. Maybe then they'll help me. Maybe nothing will ever evolve in it.
Right.
But I need to develop relationships and a network of relationships so that when an opportunity comes or when a question comes, I have somewhere to go.
Right.
My wife says I have to start from scratch.
Right. My wife says the same thing. Yeah. She loves to kind of give me the little jab every now and then, because my business is a relationship business.
Absolutely.
Just like yours.
Yep.
Right. We are in the relationship business. Yes, there are things that we'd love to see get done. For me, I'd love to make sales and help people and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, if you don't like me, you're probably not doing business with me.
Exactly.
Right. If you don't like your idea or it doesn't serve people, then the idea is probably not going to get done.
Yep.
Right. And so we are in the relationship business, and she loves to jab because she's in my calendar. Sometimes it looks like all I'm doing is having lunches with people, but that's my business. My business is doing relationship business. Right.
Yep.
So I love the fact that your partner is the same as mine, because
Yeah.
sometimes I'm like, man, is it just me or not?
So Beth and your partner might not agree, but we're doing the right thing.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what's next for the port then? Obviously, the short sea shipping containers. That's a
right
big
now,
mouthful
right
there.
now
But
at the More Term, we're working with the owner of More Term, Essex Terminal Roy. They own the property. We are right now building a new dock that will be container ready. So we'll have a new seawall, hard surface, lights, cameras, all the security we need. We'll have CPSA facilities.
wow.
$1 million scanner. That's what you have to scan it for aviation.
Wow.
And that'll set us up. But it sets us up even before we get containers coming in though. It'll set us up for another dock. We can bring in more offshore product.
Right.
So that's the great thing. Really exciting news in the last couple of years at ADM. ADM is a grain facility, one of the largest food company in the world. I know people realize, because they don't get to see it because it's behind, so far off of.
You drive down Ojibwe Parkway.
You don't see it.
You see a sign that says ADM with an arrow that way,
That's right.
and you're like, where is it? I don't see it.
And yet, it's the largest grain terminal in the Great Lakes.
Wow.
It's the largest oil crushing facility in the Great Lakes. If you get they crush soybean and canola, and if you eat at McDonald's, Burger King, or Wendy's, those fries were cooked in oil from Port Windsor. If you buy a 4-liter jug of oil, I don't care what the label is on it. If it says soybean and or canola, and it's made in Canada, it's from Port Windsor.
Wow.
And they just invested $85 million to increase their ability to bring in more grains, hold more grains.
Wow.
They had processing capacity. They just didn't have on-site storage, or once they processed the product, storage to hold it until they shipped it out by ship or rail.
Right.
And so that's really great news, because they should increase their production by 300,000 to 400,000 ton a year. What does that mean? Right now, we buy 7 out of every 10 fields of grain in Essex County, Kent, Lambton, Middlesex, all from here to London. I'll make it simple. Every field, as you drive to London, count 10 fields, 7 of them are coming to Port Windsor, all the way up to Lake Huron.
It's a lot.
Yeah, and now that will be 8 out of every 10 fields.
Wow.
And so great for the farmers. They have a market for their product.
Absolutely.
Their prices are sustained because there's demand for their product. Because even when we bought 7, well, the remaining 3 had to find somewhere to sell them. So you might take a little less money.
Right.
Now there's a demand for their product, sustains the prices, gives them a guaranteed market, and they farm and invest with confidence in the farmland.
Right.
Employees are great. Sterling Fuels. We were the very first on the Great Lakes to introduce biodiesel, 100% biodiesel. So we're not making the carbon reduction was about 90%.
Oh wow.
Yeah, over regular diesel or bunker oils. So not only they're first, they were now other people are getting it, but they're still the largest. And to the credit of Sterling, they're investing in that. They are now putting in $10 million with a $5 million grant to expand that capacity, so they remain the largest and most sophisticated provider of biodiesel in the Great Lakes. That's where we're all going. Right. Biodiesel is the next alternative fuel. People talk about hydrogen and methanes and ammonias. Yeah, they are an alternative, but they're not proven. They're not available in great quantities, and they're not funded critically. They're not a drop-in fuel.
Yeah.
You can, fill up with diesel oil, last week, and this week come in and dump in biodiesel. Doesn't matter. It works that easily.
Yeah, I never thought I'd learn so much about transportation and trucking and engines and fuels and everything as I have in the last 6 or 7 years being a part of the transportation club. Like, I never thought I'd learn as much as I've learned.
So the biodiesel is critical to shipping, but right now we're only producing about 10% of all the biodiesel we're going to need in 2030. So we're actually involved with another group, and we're looking at a facility maybe up to $100 million to produce biodiesel right here in Port Windsor.
Wow. Okay. Wow. I mean, you guys have so much going on at the port, and it's going to, I assume, increase jobs. It's going to allow shipping, everything here.
Absolutely.
There's so much positive impact of what you guys are doing.
1,100 people a day are coming to work in Port Windsor.
Right. And it's going to grow.
It will grow.
Assuming.
It absolutely will grow.
Yeah. So we're running out of time here.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you the final question, which we always ask people. Yes. Everybody's different, and I'm very curious to hear your answer, because you're not a self-employed person or anything like that. So I'm really interested to see how your question kind of coincides with everybody else's. But we always end the podcast with, what does success mean to Steve Salmons?
It's interesting that you led with you're not a self-employed person. And that may be for a very fundamental reason. I've never been motivated by money.
Yeah.
I'm paid well. I'm doing well in life. I've done well in life for quite a while. I'm quite comfortable financially, certainly more than my parents could have ever imagined.
Yeah.
But that has never been the motivating factor. I've never said, well, what do you get paid? Or how much money can I make?
Right.
And I've always thought that's why I never went to sales, that's why I never went to individual business, because, selling the next contract or selling the next thing doesn't really do anything for me. Success for me is, did I, first, because I'm the head of our, is the organization stronger and better? And it has a more prosperous future than when I arrived?
Right.
That's a good thing. And the organization only exists to make a difference in the world. And did I make a difference?
Right.
The libraries, did I make it? We won 12 awards changing. We built things. We introduced digital. That was great. The city, we fundamentally changed the city structure, saved them $5 million a year in their administrative processes. When I was with the government, we built the parkway, the
Right.
bridge,
Yeah.
that feels pretty good. Not that I built the bridge. Oh my God, it took thousands of professionals to do that.
But you're a part of it.
But, I was thrilled to be part of it and push the political envelope to get there, because
Right.
it wasn't easy. If you remember, there were big, big community meetings. People were completely opposed to this,
Yeah.
but we got it through and the world's better for it. So that's, to me, is what defines success.
Yeah.
Is the world a better place? Because for my time and efforts and skills.
Right. Yeah. Some people might not remember our name, but
Yeah.
the things that are built and the things that remain after we're gone are
Yeah.
still standing because I
Yeah.
had a hand in it.
Yeah, I tell my children, I said, if I'm not here one day, and I guess I won't be one day, but you can tell your children, my grandchildren, that when you drive on the 401 and see the on routes, that was Grandpa's project.
Right. Yeah. That's a huge,
Yeah.
huge thing. Those on routes are a major part of driving
right.
up the 401. So, well, Steve, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come and chat. Hopefully we can do this again.
It's always a pleasure chatting with you.
I'm really, really interested to see the short sea shipping container project
You got it out.
continue. Maybe in a couple of years when it's done and ready, and we can chat more about it. That'd be exciting. So, thank you for the time. Everybody, if you're following at home and you're listening at home, you can find us anywhere you guys listen to your podcast, whether it's Apple, whether it's Spotify, you name it. Go check it out. This is another episode of Cracking the Success Vault with Spectre Financial.